I've wanted to do a video on leadership for a while, but I'm going to focus mostly on how the thinking mind conceptualizes leadership versus how the wisdom teachings in the past, and I'll go back to Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, and compare kind of our modern version of leadership to how Lao Tzu had conceptualized it. And so it's very popular now to conceptualize leadership from the viewpoint of the thinking mind. And the problem, this is just right at the beginning, this is an issue because the thinking mind is very limited. It can think one thought at a time. And the systems it often tries to manage are dozens of people, or sometimes it's trying to manage things like nature and things that have dozens, if not thousands, of variables, and variables that interact. And it's one of the things I discuss in when I used to teach statistics and experimentation, is that variables can interact in very complex ways, and the thinking mind can handle maybe one or two variables interacting. Anything beyond that, it just can't understand what's going on. But that's the way the world works. That's the way systems work. That's the way actual human beings work. You know, one person may get along with another, but then if another person walks in, then the whole dynamics change. And so even three people can result in a complex interaction of variables. And so that's the first difficulty the thinking mind has when it comes to leadership. Now, we actually have neuromechanisms to deal with this. Things like intuition and feelings can actually handle a multitude of variables, and it can handle these variables interacting in very complex ways. But the problem in the West is that we have almost no education in how to refine and cultivate intuition and emotion. In fact, the exact opposite is often the case. We're taught just right at the beginning that these are problems for leadership and they're problems for making good decisions. So we just sort of eliminate them right at the beginning. The second issue is that the thinking mind is really what's behind the concept of the self or an ego. And so the thinking mind believes that there should be a captain in charge or some kind of CEO. And that's a really new idea for the universe. So think about the billions of years that the universe has been around and how long human beings have even been around, millions of years. And it worked really harmoniously without any type of CEO. You know, there's not some decision-making process when it rains or if it's going to snow tomorrow. These things just have a way of happening. So these very complex systems seem to work really amazingly well without any thinking mind making a decision behind them. But that's not the way the thinking mind thinks it should be. The thinking mind is incredibly convinced that there's got to be one kind of person, one thinking mind in charge, and then it will make a decision. It's going to be the best decision. And you can kind of see through that system how it's just not really going to work very effectively. Think about it with neuroscience. Because the thinking mind believes in this kind of CEO mentality, the first thing neuroscience started to investigate is, well, where's the CEO in the brain? I mean, certainly, you know, this is like, you know, the spaceship, and there's got to be like a pilot somewhere, you know, controlling everything. Who makes the decisions? There's got to be a single force behind it. And of course, the thinking mind believes that it's the force making these decisions. So where is the CEO in the brain? And that turned out to be an absolute failure. To this day, after 50 or plus years of trying to find some command center in the brain, they have not found anything that even comes close. So let's go back to Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching. What was Lao Tzu's ideas of leadership? It's really different than the way we conceptualize it today, at least here in the West. Lao Tzu said the very best leaders are the ones that go completely unnoticed. The second best are those that are praised. The third best are those that are feared, and the absolute worst leader are the ones who are despised. And he talked about how the very best leaders would work in a way such that they were so unnoticed, that their presence was so unnoticed, that when something amazing was accomplished, people would take credit for it themselves. So the leader was literally so much in the background that they would not take credit. And you can see how that ties in with confusing leadership with ego, because of course, that's the one thing the ego really wants to do when something works well, is to take credit for it. So this isn't to say that we shouldn't have leaders necessarily. It's just that the concept of what a leader is, when it's dominated by the thinking mind, is much different than how it has worked in the past. And so, this notion of inspiration, this idea of leading by example, um, uh, these all seem to work much more harmoniously with nature. The idea of like giving out tickets, or creating a set of rules, and then using a system of punishments and rewards, just doesn't seem to work. This is a really new thing. If it doesn't rain tomorrow, there's no cosmic police force that gives a ticket because it rained a day later than it should. And yet, if you hand in an assignment too late, then in our theory, some leader should come along and give out some kind of equivalent. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on leadership, and how the thinking mind uh, plays a role in what our modern version of leadership is. And as always, drop me a comment, and we'll see where it goes.